And I implemented those techniques as I moved forward. As I moved forward. Stop it. As I moved forward. Hello. Welcome to the 8th episode of Level Up with Lev. I'm Lev, your host, and today I will be sharing 2 ways that I conceptualize the journey of personal growth and development. Before we dive into today's episode, I just want to remind you that we're close to the end of the first mini season, which means that I will be taking a break of about 2 to 3 weeks in order to prepare for the next season. Before we get there, I just want to request that if you have any questions, please send them in to me. I want to do a Q&A episode for the 10th episode in this mini season, so feel free to reach out to me on any form of social media that you can at Level Up with Lev. I'd happily receive your questions, and I can't wait to answer them. I also want to note that in between these mini seasons, I will be active on the other social media platforms like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, or X, so feel free to follow me on those platforms and reach out to me there. I'll be interacting and posting mini reels. And with that said, let's dive into today's episode. So today's episode will focus on the journey of personal growth and development, and to do so, I want to start with a metaphor of climbing mountains because that's an activity that I really enjoy, but it also has instilled a few lessons, 2 of which I'll be sharing today. So up to this point, I feel like I've gotten a good enough grasp in terms of the pre-work that I needed to do in order to clear some of those blockages. So at this stage, I felt that I was at a point where I could make positive incremental steps towards the person that I want to become. But of course, when it comes to doing anything challenging, I find that there are mental roadblocks that can really inhibit our progress forward. And so the 2 ways that I'm conceptualizing the journey in this case help me get over those mental roadblocks and actually make the progress that I'd like to make. So the 2 concepts that I want to focus on today include focusing on progress and the long game. So when it comes to focusing on progress, for example, when I go on hikes, I focus on the stretch that's right in front of me and take it 1 step at a time. And that's because it can be quite intimidating to see that you're 100 feet of elevation gain into a 2,000 foot hike, or perhaps you're 15 minutes into a 3-hour journey. Maybe you can see the peak of the mountain far off in the distance from your current location. But I focus on the steps right in front of me, partially for safety's sake, but also because I know that each step that I take is a step in the right direction towards my ultimate goal of reaching the summit, and that these little actions that I take will lead to me achieving this big goal. And the second concept of the long game can be viewed in 2 different ways. So for the first, when I think about hiking in general, it isn't a one and done situation. I'm in it for the long run. I know that I love hiking and I'm going to continue to hike in many different locations for as long as my body will allow, and hopefully that's for a really long time. I'll continue to do so because I know it's something that provides me with a sense of joy and fulfillment, and it also has additional benefits to my health. Also, hiking forces me to expand my perspective and timeline. You have to plan in advance if you want to minimize the possible dangers associated with hiking and maximize your chances of success of reaching that summit. I have a destination in mind and I know what hikes I want to visit or what locations I want to stop at, and finally the peak I want to reach. I also have to prepare for the hike by taking what is necessary, including supplies like water and food and a first aid kit, in the event that I need it or the people that are with me need it. So in today's episode, I'll explore how I employ both of those 2 concepts when it comes to conceptualizing the journey, namely focusing on progress, not necessarily the destination, and the concept of the long game. Focus on progress. Now, in an earlier episode when I spoke about desire, I mentioned that I fostered desire in order to increase my motivation to reach a goal. And I also mentioned that I'm more outcome-driven than process-driven. Now, I want to clearly distinguish how that differs from today's conversation because it's a very fine distinction. So in that episode, I mentioned that I fostered desire in order to increase motivation to do the work required. However, in today's episode, I'm referring to the idea that while we are working towards a goal, it can be easy to lose motivation if we feel we aren't making enough progress. So I want to drive the point home that it's important to keep the dream and our future goal alive in our heads to keep us fueled and doing the work if we aren't process driven like some people are. But during the time in which we are working towards the goal, we might benefit from zooming in, particularly during the reflection phase of the order framework, reflecting on our progress as we go. So the point I want to drive home is that sometimes while we're making progress towards our goal, it can be really helpful to look at smaller timescales and look at incremental change as opposed to comparing ourselves now to the ultimate version that we would like to achieve. So for example, if I want to lose 20 pounds in 3 months, it might be difficult to compare our results of only losing 1 or 2 pounds within 2 or 3 weeks compared to that 3-month goal. So an example there would include looking at a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis to compare our results and say, okay, I lost 2 pounds in this week or 2 period, and then the next week you might find that you lose another 2 pounds. And that is very helpful because when we zoom in, we see that we're making steps in the direction that we would like to head, and that's what we want to focus on, is the progress. Another example would be the creation of this show. I see examples of incredible, well-edited, and high-performing content that reaches a very wide audience. And while that might be something that I have as a goal for the future of this show, initial progress for me simply looked like planning out the content, purchasing equipment, recording the initial episode, and putting out one single video. All of those small steps move me in the direction of achieving the goal of making a project that I'm proud of. And then I learned how to add text to a video. I also learned how to add emojis to a video and do proper transitions. And having, for example, one video overlaid on top of another video with the audio of the original video playing over top of the video of the second. And note here that I started with a stable baseline foundation of learning what it takes to record a video and edit a video and edit audio. And from there, as I continued to record and put out new episodes, I learned how to do more things one step at a time because I was focusing on the progress and not creating a perfect product right out the gate. And so as I continued to put out more episodes, I learned how to do things in a quicker and more efficient way. So I compared myself to the editor or recorder that I was last week. I took notes of what works better and what doesn't, what takes longer and what's a little bit faster, and I implemented those techniques as I moved forward. So a side note here includes the idea that we get better at a skill through practice and implementation, but also reflecting on what worked and what didn't, and then refining as we move forward. It's an iterative process. And so to cap off this topic, I just want to note that the destination is the dream that keeps me moving forward, but the progress along the way is what keeps me going by appreciating all of the little steps that I make, and also to appreciate the journey as I go. So I don't view either as more important. They both have their value, and individuals may find that they're more motivated or inspired by the journey or the destination. So again, whatever works for you. For me, having this balance allows me to find that sweet spot that keeps me moving forward. And once I reach a new destination, achieve my goal, that destination then becomes a new origin, and my eyes once again turn to a new summit in pursuit of my next goal. The long game. So before we discuss the long game in more detail, I just want to reiterate the importance of creating a stable baseline foundation. I've found that it is probably the most important use of my time and energy when it comes to starting anything new. And that's because a stable foundation provides the ability to know that you can build something beautiful on top of it without worrying about extraneous factors such as the stability of your palace. And this is often where I spend the majority of my time. So again, I'll break down the concept of a stable foundation more in the future in the next mini season, but just as a preview, this is where I put everything in place, including systems that will help to facilitate goal achievement. And so when it comes to personal growth and development, I'm in it for the long run. I do it for the love of the game and for the end result that I expect to see. And I don't expect immediate growth or realization of my goals. I keep in mind that Rome wasn't built in a day. Great, impressive structures often take a great deal of time and effort in order to construct, but with persistence and consistency, they reach completion. And so I've found it valuable to think of myself in this manner, as a project that will take a lot of time and a lot of effort in order to construct, and it will be great when it's complete, if there is a true point of completion. And so I know that there may be no complete state. I'm committed to learning and to working on myself and knowing that I'll be a work in progress for quite some time. And that's okay with me because, as I mentioned in the last section, progress is my focus. We are leveling up one day at a time. And so it serves me well to keep in my mind that progress can feel non-linear at times. But as long as we're taking steps that will push us in the direction of the desired future state that we'd like to be in, and we reflect as we go, adjusting as necessary, beyond that, I just have to have faith that I will reach my goals as long as I continue to make progress. And additionally, as I mentioned in a previous episode, learning is a crucial step that will always serve us well in our journeys. And so even if I have a course charted in a particular direction and I am actually making progress, I'm constantly trying to learn what others are doing in a particular field and see how I might be able to incorporate that into what I'm doing. And this is particularly helpful if I'm not seeing the results I'd like to see. So I have to keep in mind that even though it may feel like I'm not making the progress that I'd like to see, I know that I am as long as I'm taking those steps that are necessary to move me in that direction. And so to relate this all back to the metaphor regarding hiking and mountains, I know that if I take one step at a time, I will eventually reach that summit. And a pro tip, stop and take in the beauty along the journey. Smell the flowers. Appreciate the forest for the trees and vice versa. Appreciate the journey for what it is, a necessary part of reaching our goals. And sure, it's going to be a long and perhaps arduous journey, and there may be moments where you feel like giving up. But during those moments, just stop, take breaks, drink water, fuel up, and recoup. And then continue on, knowing that you can push yourself to achieve your goals and break through limitations that either you or others previously set for yourself. There are too many examples of individuals who do this each and every single day. So why not you? I, of course, am rooting for you, and I hope you enjoy the view from the top of that mountain. And on your way back down, or on the way to the next summit, I hope you take a moment to glance back and reflect on the progress that you made, on all that you accomplished. And so today's episode was relatively short, but that's all I've got for today. So as I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, please send me questions so I can answer them at the end of this mini season. We've got 2 episodes left. Next week, I'll do a little recap episode where I talk about what I've discussed thus far, but also look at them from a larger perspective and understand them conceptually so that we can transition smoothly into the next mini season. So with that, feel free to reach out to me. You know where to reach me, at Level Up with Lev on any of the social media channels, and I hope that this episode was worth your while. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.